Our next panelist, Dr. Paul Kamoun, hope I pronounced that right. He's responsible for space pharma business development and commercialization activities worldwide in the pharmaceutical, cosmetics, biotech, and medical sectors. And he supports SPRD's CTO and the technological development strategy. He holds an electrical engineering degree from École Supérieure d'Électricité in Paris, and a PhD in Earth and Planetary Sciences from MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He has more than 40 years of experience in space, having worked on more than 150 programs with NASA, ESA, CNES, and the Italian Space Agency, as head of advanced projects, overseeing new developments in Earth observation, planetary science, and astronomy, fundamental physics, and telecommunications. He later became VP for European business at TAS, a leading European company in the development of satellite systems. He's also been an expert evaluator in the European Union R&D framework programs, was later part of the Space Advisory Committee of FP7 and of H2020 for the definition of the EU space program. He's going to talk to us about space for health on Earth, which is an important topic. Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much, Rand, for the introduction. Okay, so I will be a little more down to earth following what we have heard for all our speakers. I will not repeat also what Liz and Marsh had said. They said really a lot of very advanced stuff that has been done in R&D, in microgravity and so on for the last 20 years, last 30 years even, and using the ISS. Clearly, with space pharma, we are very much down to earth, if I can say that, even though we are flying, because we are a commercial company. We are probably the first of the life science space company going commercial. We are created in 2012, so we are still between a startup and a small enterprise. But definitely our vocation is commercial. It doesn't mean that we do only commercial business. Of course, we have to do a lot of R&D. And today I will just focus on the aspects related to anti-aging. But of course, with the lab we have developed, and I will say a few words about our lab a little later, we have done a variety of things from pharma to cosmetics to biotech, regenerative medicine. What I'm going to focus on today, and also time is not so available, so I will try to be a bit fast, not to be waiting, making people to wait too much for the panel discussion and the questions. I will focus on one subject, which is the aging and the anti-aging products. So clearly, we are in the lower half and lower center part of this diagram in new space manufacturing. I will start maybe with a complaint to the overall financial landscape, in the sense that indeed a lot of money is invested in launchers, and space tourism is of course a candidate to use this money. But I think space manufacturing is still a bit under invested, and people should start now to wake up on that. In particular, I think the life science from space is a new revolution. I had the chance through the last 40 years to be involved in so many revolutions. In astronomy first, when I was at MIT with planetary science missions. Then, of course, in Earth observation, I was for several years the chairman of the European Association of Remote Sensing Companies. I worked in telecom, space station, navigation, but life science is the new revolution. And I think really the financial world has not understood that yet, as well as, unfortunately, the health industry. And I think we have a big job to do, and we are trying to do that at Space Pharma, to educate these potential customers. But it's a big job, and we are very happy to see new companies coming into the business of life science from space, because this will increase the visibility, and the market is definitely there. It's in the level of billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, I think, for the life science, and we really encourage people to join. So focusing on the aging, clearly we have seen that the increase in human lifespan, and we have heard about some of the initiatives, as well as the human space travel, are certainly some of the main achievements of the 20th century. And however, both the aging and the prolonged microgravity, in particular in space, are associated, as we know and as we heard today, with deteriorations and really undesirable effects to the body. And which means that now the longevity with good health, and not only longevity, but with good health, and long-time survival in space are two of the many challenges that scientists face now in the 21st century. Of course, when you want to study aging, one of the main limitations is the limitation of time, because for most of these studies, you need tens of years to see the effects. And space is of course here bringing a big advantage because of the acceleration process. And space is really an accelerated model for discovering, understanding the aging process. Now, what are the organs? What are the parts of the body which are affected by that? But it looks today that really everything in the body is affected, more or less, because actually everything from neurons to bones, the whole support system of the body has been developed in response to gravity, and which means that the correlations between lifespan and gravity are really important to understand, because gravity is everywhere in the functioning of the body. For a while, since I came from the astrophysics world and planetary observation, and in my mind, gravity was really an important force in the macro level. When you look at the microscopic view of the universe, but at microscopic level, we could not expect that when you look at that from just a little far. But it was quite surprising that gravity is playing an important role even at the microscopic level. And this of course is changing completely the view that we will have and that we are starting to have on the behavior of the body, because the influence of gravity is really happening everywhere in the body. And now the fact that we have in our hands a platform which allows to do a variety of experiments on all parts of the body, and not only on body itself, but as was discussed earlier by Liz, we are more and more working on organ on chips in order to understand what are the effects of microgravity, what are the effects of space in the body. Now, what we can see is that depending on what part of the body you are considering, the acceleration is kind of different. We see that, for instance, for the muscle, the influence, as you can see on the next slide, the acceleration factor is a factor of about 12. For bone, it's about 15. For things related to the heart and the artery, the acceleration of the degradation is about factor of 40. There is a positive side only. For instance, when you look at insulin tolerance, this is accelerated in the positive way by the body when you are in microgravity. And for other organs, you have multiplication factor by a factor of 2, a factor of 3. So it's really very different depending on the part of the body that you consider. But overall, you have this acceleration process. And if you take, as an example, a reduction of only 10% in something like sarcopenia, which is a degenerative skeletal muscle mass disorder, if you can discover the mechanisms and find some therapy, then you could save essentially about 1 billion in healthcare costs annually, in addition to, of course, solving the problem for so many people. So the economic aspect of these advances in anti-aging is considerable. Here we see just one example on one item on muscles, but of course, the brain is an even more important factor, and the heart and so on. So this is important to know, and to devise experiments in orbit, we try to take advantage of what has been learned, of course, by tens of years of work on the ISS, and which is still going on. So neurodegenerative disease are one of the priority space pharma is working on today. We have been making different proposals, and we are planning experiments to fly in the next few months, with on the European side, on the US side, in particular for Alzheimer, Parkinson, Huntington. We are looking also at prion disease with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which are related to aggregation of proteins. And in particular, one thing which is very important is that we notice similarities between the amyloid formation for neurodegenerative disease and protein crystallization. And we know that protein crystallization has been studied really widely in space. So the experience that we developed in protein crystallization, and we did some in space pharma, this kind of experience is useful for us now to work on neurodegenerative disease. There are some other domains such as dermatology, in the sense that, for instance, skin tissue, mentioned also by Liz earlier, with the tissue chip program, skin tissue can be grown in microgravity to resemble natural skin. We work in particular with teams which are doing face transplants. And these are some of the most advanced surgery you can imagine. And the subject of maintaining living skin and living skin matrix and their cells inside is a very challenging process, and it's a very complicated problem in which we can discover so many things by trying to solve little by little the different difficulties which have appeared. In particular, space pharma today is developing some research protocol to test skin aging in organ on chip, and we are preparing also some experiments in orbit. In a few minutes, I will explain how we go to orbit at space pharma, what kind of vehicle. For the immune system also, microgravity has been demonstrating to provide suppression of immune system and also changes in the system. And it's very important to investigate this mechanism in order to characterize biomarkers and new drug targets. So microgravity can really be used as a model for immune suppression disease, of which today there is no real therapy today. I mean, the ones in particular the neurodegenerative one. Immune suppression, we start to have some remedies like AIDS, but if I come back a little to neurodegenerative disease, we don't have today a real therapy for that. So microgravity model will be something extremely important to progress, and maybe we'll be able to provide some jumps in discovery that have not been happening on Earth. So Space Pharma is flying his miniaturized laboratory. One of the characteristics of this laboratory, in addition to the fact that it's microfluidics and it's using lab on chip, organ on chip, one of our key function is that our lab is fully remotely controlled. That means our customer is on the ground in his comfort zone and is seeing in his smartphone. We develop an application. He's seeing on his smartphone exactly what is happening in the lab. We have an imager, we have the microscope, spectrometer. The customer can see everything on run. So we don't need astronauts. Of course, if we go to the ISS, we still need the astronaut to plug our lab, but after it's plugged into the power, essentially the lab is directly in contact with the Earth, or is just working autonomously. And Space Pharma is using his lab in different platforms. We had started with parabolic flights. Then we started with our own lab, our nano labs, which embark our lab, which is a bit like the size of a shoebox. It's between 2 and 3 U, depending on the version. And then we have been going to the ISS, and then we are looking at the other future vehicles, which are providing a return capability, such as, for instance, in the US, Dream Chaser or Axiom, or in Europe, Space Rider, and this kind of vehicle, which are very important for our next step, which is our factory in orbit to do production, and which means that we need to bring things back. So we need flexibility to go up, and we need flexibility to go down. And that's why our system is using today our own ground station based in Switzerland. So our satellite is communicating with our ground station. We are developing our network today to communicate with our satellites and our payload, which will not necessarily be on our satellite. So that's our, I would say, important feature, is to be able to control our space research from Earth directly in near real time, using lab on chip, using organ on chip, as indicated here. And we have our patents, our own patents for organ on chip, which is very important for brain research and neurodegenerative disease. And the next missions, in the next few weeks, in few months, we are flying a company which is called Amorphical, which which has already developed some amorphous calcium carbonate based on some special fish from the sea. And this is a product that has shown high capability to avoid bone mass loss, and even to increase now bone mass, to strengthen the bodies. They have developed this very interesting product. And then we are going to fly with them in a short time to see what will be the effects on our organs on chip on board. And another project we are working on also is something a bit more fun, is some drinks which have been developing to be fighting aging, with a special combination of life-preserving compounds. And we are now going to fly also this technology based on some polymers. And things are moving quite fast, even down to earth here in the commercial domain. And there's so much more to do that I think there is really business for investors to provide their support to many companies. And we are ready for this evolution, and we wait for people to wake up. For those who have not waken up yet, but clearly people we have heard today are very well aware. People working at NASA, working on the ISS lab, and the people who have been doing experiments on this lab. I think people are very much aware of the potential, but we are still a small community altogether, and compared to the industry of the health and the industry of medicine, the things which are done today are really very, very little compared to what can be done. And the challenge now is to make this potential known to those communities, in particular the pharma, the biotech, but also to finish with a word in relation with aging cosmetics. And this is also something which is a big business worldwide, and people are just starting to discover. I talked to the CEO of one of the 3 biggest cosmetics companies in the world. Actually, I talked to the CSO, the chief scientist. I will not name the company, but I met him about 1.5 years ago. He never heard about the potential of space for working on anti-aging products, which means that there is a lot to be done. And I will just conclude with that. I think all the people who presented today made a really exciting presentations. I think we have to work all together to make this potential a reality. So that's all for me today. And thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Doctor. Certainly your presentation was no less exciting than any of the others. In fact, in some ways it's more because it's going to affect all of us, a lot of us here on Earth, even if we don't ever go into space, hopefully.